All right, hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are in Numbers chapter 31. We're going to go over, this chapter, I started this chapter in the last study, and this chapter is God, Moses is fulfilling, keeping sort of his last days in office, some of the last things he needs to tie up and pass on to Joshua, pass on the generation that's going to go into the promised land. And so there are things that God wants him to tie up so as not to carry over into the next generation. And we'll see this as we move through, that sometimes you need to take care of some things over that from one administration generation to the next. And so one of the things that God is commanding Moses to go and exact vengeance on the Midianites. The Midianites incident came because Balak wanted to hire. He hired Balaam, who was a false prophet, but also really a prophet of the Lord, a greedy prophet. But he was also well esteemed, and that might have been because he was kind of known for some of his utterances. And so Balak basically said, "Whom you bless is blessed, whom you curse is cursed." And he offered Balaam an extremely large sum of money to come and curse Israel. Balaam basically, God said, okay, you can go with him, but you have to say what I tell you to say. And he, as he would do any other prophet, he prepared him, in a sense, revealed his word to him, his true word, his voice. He did that in a very dramatic way. Remember, he was going to kill Balaam. As he was riding his donkey saw an angel standing with a sword drawn. And so the donkey turned aside, and Balaam beat him 3 times before the donkey spoke to him and go, "Why you beat me? I'm looking out for you." And then finally the angel, God opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel with his sword drawn. And he said, "Look, why are you beating your animal? Had it not been for him, I would have killed you." And so at that point, Balaam was like, "Okay, now speak, Lord." And the Lord said, "Now you go with him and you're going to speak what I tell you to speak." And that's kind of the true prophet way, how God does that, how God usually reveals himself to a true prophet. Well, so he comes to Balak, and Balak was like, "Oh, great, curse these people." And he was dangling his large sum of money. Now, Balaam was enticed by the money, but he knew, I can't speak I can only speak what God tells me to speak. He does that, Balak gets mad at him. What Balaam does, and we're going to see this in a moment, that what Balaam says, well, I can't curse them. See, that's the wrong, you're asking the wrong question here. Because God has already said he's going to bless these people. But what you can do is entice them through their idolatry, their lustfulness, and that's exactly what they did. The people fell. They lusted, they fell. 24,000 people died as a result of that. Now what we're going to find out, and we're going to state here, is that it was through the counsel of Balaam. And we saw this last time, we'll see it again, that in this vengeance, Balaam himself will die. Okay. All right. Okay. Numbers chapter 31 again. The Lord spoke to Moses, execute vengeance for the Israelites against them. Execute vengeance for the Israelites against the Midianites, After that, you will be gathered to your people. So this would be one of the last official acts of Moses in office. Okay. Verse 3. So Moses spoke to the people, equip some of your men for war. They will go out against Midian to afflict the Lord's vengeance on them. Let me say this. Now, people may take issue with God exacting vengeance. Let me reply to it this way. When you can create a universe, a world, fill it with life, it is yours to do whenever, and in whomever you choose. So that's the difference. Man cannot do that. There are certain things that man cannot do. But God has no restrictions because he's God. So, verse 4. Send 1,000 men to war from each Israelite tribe. So 1,000 were recruited from each Israelite tribe out of 1,000 in Israel. 12,000 equipped for war. Moses sent 1,000 from each tribe to war. They went with Phinehas and Eleazar the priest, in whom care was the holy objects and signal trumpets. Now the holy objects could have been the ark of the covenant, and it was called the Urim and the Thummim. The Urim and Thummim. It's kind of hard to describe what the Urim and Thummim is. It's kind of like some people try to. It's just there's never at least I haven't found one a clear kind of description of the Urim and Thummim. But it seemed like it was some kind of device or a couple of devices that, for lack of a better term, was almost like how they received divination, revelation, things like that. Okay. And this is one of the ways that they was led when God would speak to them. That was one of the ways that he would speak with them. They would have this Urim and Thummim in some kind of way. God would speak to them through that. Verse 7, they waged war against Midian as the Lord had commanded Moses, and killed every male, along with the others slain by them. Then it says they killed the Midianite kings, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. Now, you may know, well, why is Balak not mentioned here? I don't know. Okay. Unless one of the names here refers to Balak in another name. Then it says they also killed Balaam the son of Beor with the sword. So this, oftentimes we don't always see, we don't often always see the end come for someone, but here we see it. So Balaam. Now, Balaam would later be referenced for this incident all the way to the book of Revelations. I believe he's mentioned twice in reference to the churches around that John was sending his letter to. And one of the practice that he said was the doctrine of Balaam was being practiced in these churches. And what that doctrine was, it was counsel to lead the people into fornication and pagan practices. And Jesus said, which things I hate. So later, Balaam will also be known for this throughout Scripture. Verse 9. The Israelites took the Midianite women, and we'll get to this in a moment, and their children captives. And they plundered all their cattle, flocks, and property. Now, let's see here. Okay, wasn't necessarily specifically spelled out, other than killed every male. Verse 7 here. I wanted to. So, but Moses is going to chide them for taking the women. All right. So, all right, let's go back. So then, verse 10, they burned all the cities where the Midianites lived, and all, as well as their encampments, and they took away all the spoils of war and the captive, both man and beast. They brought the prisoners, animals, and the spoils of war to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and the Israelites community at the camp of the plains of Moab, by the Jordan across from the river. Now, across the Jordan, across from Jericho. Now, keep this in mind from this perspective now. This will be just a few weeks, maybe a month or two, where they will cross the Jordan. What I'm saying is that those on the other side of the Jordan, they're seeing all this. Okay, so understand that. They're seeing all this. Alright, so verse 13, Moses, Eleazar the priest, and all of the leaders of the community went to meet them outside the camp. Now this was, of course, according to the law. They had been entwined with one, dead bodies, fighting, things like that. So they had to stay outside of the camp. Verse 14, but Moses became furious with the officers, and the commanders of 1,000 and commanders of 100, who were returning from the military campaign. He said, have you let every female live? He asked them. Yet they are the ones who, now get this, Balaam's advice, incited the Israelites to unfaithfulness against the Lord in the Peor incident, so that the plague came against the Lord's community. Now, this is interesting. Because there's a couple of things I think we could draw from this, that allying with evil people. Verse 17, so now kill all the male children and kill every woman who has not had sexual relations with a man. But keep alive for yourselves all the young females who have not had sexual relations. Okay, right? Wow, right? So that was the command. Those who had not had sex with women, those you can keep, but those who have had sex, you were to kill. A lot of those women were involved in the enticement. The greater thing is that they were involved in the sin. See, that's the point. The idea of paganism, fornication, adultery, and all kinds of unsinful sexual practice, that's what's in mind here. And he said, you're going to introduce this element, pollute the Israelites with them. So the only ones who could be spared at this point were those who have not slept with men. Verse 19, you are to remain outside the camp for 7 days, all of you and your prisoners who have killed a person or have touched the dead, are to purify yourself on the 3rd day and the 7th day. Also purify everything, garments, leather goods, things made of goat hair, and every article of wood. Then Eleazar the priest said to the soldiers who had gone to battle, this is the legal statute the Lord commanded Moses. Only the gold, silver, bronze, iron, tin, and lead, everything that can withstand fire, you are to pass through fire, and it will be cleaned. It must still be purified with the purification water. Anything that cannot withstand fire, pass through the water. Okay. Now, this is interesting. Kind of a symbol when he says that everything that can stand, only the gold and silver, or anything that can withstand fire. On a kind of another note, our works, right? In our lives, our works. Paul uses that in the symbol of how we will be judged and rewarded, or judged for reward. And one of the things that, if your works withstand the gold and the silver, right, you get a reward. If your works do not, such as wood, hay, or stubble. All right, so verse 24, on the 7th day, wash your clothes, and you will be clean. After that, you may enter the camp. Now, remember, this is for Israel. We don't practice this we don't practice these ordinances of the Old Testament law today. We don't. Even though I truthfully, even though there are people who try to take from the Old Testament law such things as Sabbath day worship and things like that, some of these things like here they don't observe. Okay, even though if you're going to obey the law, the Old Testament law, you have to obey all of the Old Testament law. Verse 25, the Lord told Moses, you, Eleazar the priest, and the family leaders in the communities are to take account of what was captured, man and beast, then divide the captives between the troops who went out to war and the entire community. Set aside a tribute for the Lord from what belongs to the fighting men who went out to war, one out of every 500 humans, cattle, donkeys, sheep, and goats. Take the tribute from their half and give it to Eleazar the priest as a contribution to the Lord. From the Israelites' half, take one out of every 50 from the people's cattle, donkeys, sheep, goats, all the livestock, and give them to the Levites who perform the duties of the Lord's tabernacles. Again, this is one of the ways that the Levites, since they don't have an inheritance, they won't be given land, they will be taken care of from the nation. Verse 31, so Moses and Eleazar the priest did as the Lord commanded. The captives remaining from the plunder and the army have taken 675,000 sheep and goats, 72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys, 32,000 people. All the females who had not had sexual relations with the man. We can assume that those who had already been executed. Verse 36, the half portion for these went out to war, numbered 337, 500,000 sheep, goats. Tribute to the Lord with 675 from the sheep and goat, 36,000 cattle. The tribute from the Lord was 72 from 30,500 donkeys. A tribute to the Lord was 61, and from 16,000 people, the tribute to the Lord was 32 people. I don't know exactly what that means. Were they slaves, whatever? Not sure what that tribute means as far as people were concerned. 41. Moses gave the tribute to Eleazar the priest as a contribution for the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses, from the Israelites half, which Moses separated from the men who fought. The community half was 337,500 sheep and goats, 36,000 cattle, 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 people. Moses took one out of every 50 selected from the people and livestock of the Israelites half. He gave them to the Levites who performed the duties of the Lord's tabernacle as the Lord had commanded him. The officers who went were over 30,000 army, and the commanders of thousands and of hundreds approached Moses and told them, your servants have taken the census of the fighting men under our command, and not one of us is missing. So we have presented to the Lord an offering of gold articles each man found, armlets, bracelets, rings, earrings, and necklaces, to make atonement for ourselves before the Lord. Moses and Eleazar the priest received from them all the articles made out of gold. Note he said too that none of them were killed, that they did count. It says all our men are here. We did not lose any men in the battle. Verse 52. All the gold of the contribution they offered to the Lord from the commanders of 1,000 and 100s, with 420 pounds each of the soldiers had taken plunder for himself. Moses and Eleazar the priest received the gold from the commanders of 1,000s and of 100s, to brought 1,000s and of 100s, and brought it into the tent of the meeting as a memorial for the Israelites before the Lord. All right. So this war, it's kind of interesting what the Midianites thought, or Balak for sure thought he would do to Israel, God did to them. And not only cursed them, but they were plundered. So this generation of Israelites was taking a whole lot of stuff, right? Money, gold, cattle, people, that they would take over into the promised land. All right. All right. Chapter 32 in our next study. All right. I'll see you then.